Welcome back to this week's episode of the Campfire Series podcast. I am Logan Soforenko, your host. We have a very special guest joining us on this week's theater episode from the Broadway cast of Chicago the Musical.
My name is Arian Keddell. I am in the Broadway company of Chicago the Musical. I play Mona in the show. I was kind of hot off the heels of the national tour as well, where I played Annie and was a matron Mama Morton cover. I was 5 months into my Broadway debut contract when Broadway shut down. So here we are all these months later. I'm not sure how many months later at this point. It's kind of a time warp.
Walk me through the journey of casting, getting cast in Chicago.
Oh my gosh. I auditioned for the show 10 times, right? Like June's monologue. I auditioned for the show 10 times. This was my dream show. This is 1000% my dream show. I started off as a concert dancer, as a classical ballerina, and made the transition into musical theater. And people just kept saying over and over and over to me, you belong in Chicago. You belong in Chicago the Musical. And it's interesting because the first time I saw the show was a national tour in my hometown of Elmira, New York. They played at the Clemens Center as a young ballerina. And I was like, oh my gosh, can I do this? Is this like something that you do as a ballerina? No, and not as a classical ballerina. So, okay, that's fine. Fast forward years later, and it just kept coming up over and over again. So I said, I'm just going to go, I'm going to audition. I'm going to start auditioning. And through the process, it was always something a little different, right? You kind of never know what to expect when you're walking in the room for any audition, right? You don't know what they're looking for. You don't know if you fit exactly what the vision is at the time. And so I kept getting really beautiful and positive feedback and so much encouragement. And after probably like the 6th time, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna do this anymore. So I took some time off. I had pretty much semi-retired. I had a ballet school and musical theater academy in upstate New York and was teaching dance and kind of, just sort of on with things. But I kept saying, if Chicago calls, that's what I would go back for. That's what I'm going back for. And I went to a few more auditions, didn't pan out. And then my best friend, Lauren, called me up and was like, hey sister, I've got this project. Would you be involved with it? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Of course. So it ended up being a really fun, awesome experience running around with her. She was choreographing this industrial show, which was super cool. And then when that ended, I was, back to teaching and everything else. And there was a Chicago audition. And I said, no, sister, I just can't do it. I can't do it. She goes, no, you're coming to New York City. Get your life together. Let's go. I'm like, no. Yes, you're going. And sure enough, that was the audition that I booked for the national tour, and started with the show in August of 2018, was on tour for a year, and got back to where I am now, Elmira, New York, and thought to myself, you know what, it's time, just make the push, move to New York City. Let's just do this, right? The fire was lit again after joining the show because it's so fantastic. It's just such a great show. And I was like, oh my God, no wonder this was your dream show, right? And then in October, like toward the end of September, I still have the text message saved. Like, let's be real, it's somewhere in my text messages. Whatever the specific date is, I'm not sure. I get a text message from casting, and it's like, hey, do you have time for a phone call? And I said, yes, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is this my contract? Like, is this my, and sure enough, I was offered a Broadway contract without having to audition again, which was pretty amazing. But lucky me, right? Like, I had the opportunity to work with Walter Bobby during the rehearsal process of the national tour. We had the opportunity to work with Annie while we were on the road in Phoenix. So I guess sort of the way that it worked out with the powers that be, I had enough and was doing enough that it all sort of panned out and worked to get me into my Broadway debut.
That's a nice journey. I think what's super cool about Chicago is that obviously it's been around for a long time, but also you being in it. Would you say that it's a little more modern and it has different truth than it did decades ago? Probably seeing it when you were younger and following the show throughout your life and now being in it, especially in any time like this. You know what I mean?
You know what's interesting is I feel like the show is so applicable pretty much anywhere you put it, right? The sensationalism around kind of getting away with being with not always making the right choices, with not always doing the right thing, but because we're in still in are always in this culture of the next best thing, and whoever sort of has the loudest, biggest, most forceful voice is the one we're following, is the one we're listening to. The show can kind of be put in various situations, and again, like I said, various timelines, and it's always applicable. That's why I just think it's so genius. It's so incredibly written that really anywhere on the map that you put it, you're going to be able to apply something to everything that's going on. And look at where we are right now, right? With so much sensationalism in the news and in the media, and have been for, I kind of feel like since the start of reality television. That's like sort of, you know, let me be careful with how I say that, but it's true. It's always this thing where, again, it's the biggest and the brightest and the fastest and the flashiest, and almost like instant gratification. That's what we want. We want instant gratification. And the show models that so expertly, and equally shows that here today, gone tomorrow, and it's a hard lesson, because what are the takeaways by the time all is said and done? You're thinking to yourself, this is an amazing kind of, like, I'm in the limelight, I'm in the spotlight, time to, but if you can't be connected to, for me, like, if you can't be connected to what your truth is, to what things look like by the time all is said and done, like you being able to look at yourself in the mirror and be proud of who it is that you are, to be comfortable in your own skin and everything else, then it's totally going to bowl you over. It's totally going to blow by you, and you will have lost the opportunity to be able to have any kind of longevity or staying power. So it's a really, like I said, it's just so expertly written. It's really fantastic to me.
Obviously, 8 times a week. That's the task of being on Broadway. Everyone wants to be on Broadway. Everyone wants to be on a tour, but people don't realize how taxing 8 shows a week really is. What are some ways you stay physically strong and mentally tough doing a show 8 times a week?
I do a ballet class before every show, like just a little bit of a something. I always do my plies. I always do my tendus. That for me is very grounding, probably because of my background and because of my early training. I've learned, I would say, I've learned to actually take a minute to breathe in between things. Before, I was kind of one of those people who was like, okay, I'm going to get up and go, and now it's time to do this, and now it's time to do that, and all these other things. And it's funny because our dance captain, David Bushman, said to me, it's a different flow. It's a different lifestyle when you're here in New York City. It's especially when you're trying to get through each day, and particularly a 2-show day. And our schedule is Thursday, Friday, double Saturday, double Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So it's kind of grueling by the time all is said and done, because we all talk about, like, oh man, a 5-show weekend, that's rough. But that's like not a thing for us. A 5-show weekend is just like normal, because then we've still got those other 2 shows like right immediately after. Um, and it was an important thing for me to hear, because I've never really been someone who has allowed myself rest. And I always felt sort of guilty around it. And it was so important to be able to figure out how to figure out where I'm going to put rest and relaxation and just sort of sitting down for a minute, taking stock of what's going on around me, and then going, okay, now we can get on to whatever the next thing is. And I give myself a healthy amount of time before the show actually starts. And I did the same thing while I was on the tour. I like to be to the theater at least, like, I mean, bare minimum 45 minutes. Usually it's an hour before half hour. I really like to give myself enough time to put my makeup on, calm myself down potentially from whatever the day has brought me. And then again, too, like I said, really get that warm up in every single time. Like I start warming up in the dressing room, and then I go down on the stage, meet a couple of my castmates. We like sort of hang out and chat in the alleyway, talk about a few things, stretching before the show starts, and then get on with it. The once you hear that 5, 6, 7, 8, it's kind of like, I'm ready, and then you go.
Chicago's at the Ambassador, one of the I would say one of the smaller houses on Broadway. How does that feel as a performer dealing with the space? And I don't know the size of the backstage area, but correct me if I'm wrong. The orchestra is on the stage, right?
Yes, which is so cool. It is really, really cool. Even on the tour, when we would play these huge houses, it didn't feel the same. Being in the Ambassador, it's just the right size, the intimacy, the type of show that it is, it lends for that level of intimacy and that connection with the theater or with the audience and being so close. So it's helpful to have a theater of that size. And then to have the musicians on the stage is the coolest. Every time you turn around, you make eye contact with this person, you got to wink with that person, you're like chatting up sort of with this person here and there. So it builds on the energy and the camaraderie of what's going on the stage. There is an amazing pulse that happens in Chicago, I feel like, and I'm sure it's happened with every cast. Everyone is there because they love this show. And when you are in that energy and in that pulse, it just is exciting, and it makes things go so much more smoothly, and it really just makes it fun by the time all is said and done.
Well, this is a weird question, but any celebrities come and see the show that you've seen in the audience, or you've heard, oh, so and so's here?
Janet Jackson came to see the show. And oh my gosh. And at one point in time, because I'm one of those people, I sort of look out into the audience. I don't really look out into the audience. I try to look out into the audience. I am oddly a kind of shy person. So even when I'm up on stage, I'm like, sort of doing my thing. But I was like, oh my God, where's Janet? I have to find Janet Jackson. And there she was. And I'm staring at her thinking, okay, you have to do your show, focus, pay attention to what's going on. And equally like, God, she is beautiful. Like, she is so stunning. I'm like, oh, I hope Janet is watching me. It was really one of those like kind of fangirl moments because it's Janet Jackson. So I have not had as much experience with celebrities in the audience. The show is always star-studded. There's someone coming in, someone amazing, and the people that we work with, just the generations of incredible Broadway performers who are staples in the show, even in as it is. So that for me was my biggest fangirl moment, is having Janet in the audience and just thinking to myself, I'm right now in my dream show with all of these amazing performers already around me, and Janet Jackson is in the audience. This is like the Mecca. I have arrived.
How do you feel your training, or you said your early training earlier? You said how that benefited you. What are some specific ways that your early training helped you for a really dance heavy show and really a triple threat type of show?
Yeah, I think that the Fosse style of movement and the way that Anne has set the show lends so beautifully on a ballet trained body. It's and anyone who really kind of studies the vocabulary, you learn the nuances, you get the style into your system, right? But there are so many parallels in terms of shapes. and the fluidity. And when you have, um, I feel like I got lucky in my training in that I had I had a Russian classical background. And then when I got to college, that expanded into Bournonville and Cicchetti and different styles within the ballet context as well. And then the first company that I danced with was also fused with West African dance. So there were so many influences that I was able to pick up along the way of my training that I felt like allowed for me to be able to kind of get into the style, understand shapes, understand grounding, understand how to be in my body in a certain way that really has only been of benefit. There's not even a time when I can think of where it really hasn't super served me to be like, oh, well, I can do this because this is a développé side, or I can do this because this is, you gotta arch that foot when you're going down into that split, and all these other different things that you learn. I mean, even sometimes the angles that you want to make sure that you're keeping your ankle at as you're splitting on the stage. It's like, oh, that's what I do in my point shoes. Fantastic. Let's just put all this together and let it work for you. So it really has been incredibly beneficial.
When I don't know if you I don't know when the journey started for the search for Roxy, but you being in the cast, kind of, did you follow that journey and kind of see like, oh, I'm gonna prepare to have these this new Roxy Hart come into the show, because they come in, kind of not frequently, but they're in and out a lot. And especially with this idea, you said you use a lot of starstruck people and a lot of celebrities that are in the show, and talented people in the Broadway industry, and now you're having, was supposed to be, if the pandemic didn't happen, this brand new, debut Roxanne Hart. How would that have been for you to kind of welcome her into the show?
Well, it's really interesting. I personally, I didn't really follow it, mostly because it was all sort of happening when I was getting ready to go into the Broadway show. And so I was learning a new track and learning a new monologue and kind of learning and everything. And my rehearsal process was quick. We're talking, I went into the show in like 3 rehearsals or something like that. So yeah, it was like, come on, girl, let's do it. But it was, everything was, I'm not going to say everything was essentially the same. It was tiny things that could potentially trip you up, right? Because it is just little changes here and there. And then certainly, learning a new monologue and everything else. So my only focus at that point in time was making sure I easily and peacefully walked into this company of people who has been kind of rocking and rolling for however many years together, and not create too many disturbances, and certainly not go in there and not know what I'm doing. So I was, and that's sort of my nature. I'm a laser focused individual. Once something is set in front of me, a specific task, I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. Very tunnel visioned. And then sort of as I got more comfortable and felt a little more at ease with things, I was like, oh yeah, this other thing is happening. But there wasn't a lot of conversation about it. It was very hush hush, even from us, because it was supposed to be a surprise and they didn't want anything kind of getting out and around and about. I think it would have been, I was welcomed into the company so wholeheartedly and very warmly. So I have no doubt that anyone coming in, I would hope, right? Anyone coming in would be welcomed with that same kindness and same support. That was such an amazing and cool experience to be walking in, and everyone was just so fantastic. So I like I said, I have no doubt that we would have just rallied and pulled together and said, hey girl, like, let's just make this happen for you, and best wishes.
What's your favorite number to do?
Oh, that is so hard. I go back and forth. I love Cell Block Tango. Everybody loves Cell Block Tango. But there is, like I said earlier, there is this energy and there's this pulse about all that jazz. As soon as you like hit that big breath and everyone is breathing together, it's like this collective inhale, And there is something so delicious about it that I cannot even describe. And it's electrifying. It is. You kind of get these little senses through your body, like, oh baby, this is it. They're like, here we go. We're about to just get this going.
Before we wrap up, what is some advice you can give? Because especially Chicago is a really dance heavy show. A lot of dancers would be like strong dancers be like, "This is my show. I'm gonna go for it. I have this dream." What is some advice you can give to also having a good technique with your voice, keeping your body healthy, and just with constant work on monologues? Just what's some stuff you can give to young actors like in college and high school, and any aspiring Broadway performers?
I feel like just like with dance, you want to make sure that you are in class or you're studying. Whatever your pathway is to stay connected, tagline, stay connected to your craft. That is real. You want to make sure that you are doing the work that is going to keep you mentally strong, really mentally strong, that's going to keep you emotionally strong, so that you understand that there are going to be days when your body isn't going to show up for you the way that you hoped it would, despite how much training you're doing, when your voice might crack or something might happen on the stage. And so it's not quite exactly where you thought it might be. And those are the things that, yes, certainly, if you can be in dance class a couple of times a week, that's really important. If you find a vocal teacher who you really love to work with and who you think brings out the best in you, find a way to study with them as frequently as you can. It doesn't necessarily have to be every day, certainly not. You'll record your lessons and then play them back for yourself. And that should be, relatively daily if you can make that work in your schedule. Things are a little weird right now. So I feel like we're all sort of trying to figure out what a new structure looks like for us. And find your acting classes, get in an acting class and try new things, and again, be willing to like make mistakes and know that everything is not going to be perfect. But if you set yourself up for success in terms of making sure that you know the habits and what it is that you need in order to make sure that your body is functioning at optimum, then those that would be my greatest advice that I would give to young performers and people. And even right now, I know that I have not been doing as much as I'm accustomed to doing in terms of making sure that I'm keeping my body in shape, but building habits, healthy habits, is so important. Like, eat your fruit and vegetables. Don't deny yourself certain things. I know that we can sometimes get into restrictive places where we think, okay, well, don't do this and don't do that and don't do this and don't do that. I love to reframe stuff so that it's in the positive. Yeah, do this because this is something that makes you happy. Yes, do that because this is something that keeps you smiling. Yes, do this. Find your yeses and not your nos. And that's the same thing with class. Find the teachers that you love. Find the people that you really they fire you up when you're working with them. They inspire you to keep working independent of them as well. Because you're not always going to get to class. You're not always going to get to the voice lesson because you may not have the money. You may not have the time. You may not have the, fill in the blank. So you just want to be able to figure out, again, what that looks like for you, what your needs are, and then go from there.
I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm not specifically a dance performer, so hearing these new tips, and my little sister, she's just got enrolled in dance class. She's like, I don't know all the French terms, and I'm like, no, you'll learn them, and I really appreciate you coming on. And when you were saying a couple, I'm like, okay, I know a little bit of dancer lingo, but
And it's funny too, because and depending on the style of dance that you train in, you know what I mean? You'll hear different phrases. You'll hear things called something different, and again, I might get in trouble for saying this, but you're in a good class when you've got your teacher saying vocabulary. You want to hear vocabulary. You know what I mean? Like, you want to know what people are talking about when you're in the room. You don't ever want to be that dancer. You don't ever want to be that person, particularly if you don't train in dance as much, who doesn't know what's going on when someone just starts rattling off names. So keep a notebook. That is so important. I used to have my students keep a notebook, and they would write down their corrections from class, and they would write down terminology that they maybe didn't hear before, or how to execute certain things. And that was influential for them. And I think really beneficial by the time all was said and done, because they were able to go into various different workshops and conventions and competitions and know what people were talking about when they heard different terminology. So it's important. Keep that notebook, and good luck to her and you too.
I appreciate that. I like the notebook.
Of
I
course.
I, I really appreciate you coming on, take some time out of your day. I'll let you know when the episode drops, and we'll have some fun and stuff. You know what I mean?
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you so much. It was so nice to talk to you.
Absolutely. It was nice meeting you as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, hopefully, when this is all said and done, we'll see you at the Ambassador, and see some Chicago and go down to the cell block.
Next year at this point, but let's keep our fingers crossed. Come and check us out. We will be at the Ambassador for sure.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, you have a good day, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay positive.
Thanks so much. You too. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.